Mass ass destruction. See, there we go. That's what it is.
I have no idea what we're talking about.
Weapons, guns, reasons to invade Iraq.
Weren't we going to be talking about weapons? How did we get to Chad?
Have you seen this show?
Yeah, that's kind of what ends up happening in the first place. We were talking about... Oh, God. Wait, how did we actually get into there?
Yeah. Also, there's one thing that happens and it makes you cry. And it's not dropping the sun on Japan. You're not involved on that one. They don't make you do that. Or the second time either. Neither of the times. Anyway, all of this is to say that for some reason Germany built one boat.
Okay. That...
Was Hitler?
He was...
Almost certainly.
Yes, but more importantly, he was a broke that was really lucky.
All right. The royal you.
Okay.
Okay.
I am sitting in my big chair.
Listen, if anybody could read in Russia, they would have read the Communist Manifesto and gone, this is stupid.
Stephen, what do you think is the most misrepresented piece of military technology in history?
Oh, God. Bows, guns, it really just depends on what we're talking about here in the first place. Gabby, it is not my ass. My wife
That's
just
not a
said it's
weapon,
my
that's
ass.
a delicacy.
No, see, that is a WMD.
Weapon of masculinity destruction?
No, see, it's the mass, weapon of mass. Mass ass destruction. See, there we go. That's what it is.
I have no idea what we're talking about.
Weapons, guns, reasons to invade Iraq.
That's the beginning of the episode right there. I have no idea what we're talking about. Weapons, guns, and reasons to avoid Iraq.
Invade Iraq.
That's the opening
said.
right there in the first place.
I feel like we just keep collectively learning this lesson that we shouldn't be invading Iraq.
The amount of times
think.
that things have happened over the course of the Middle East and other places that a lot of people just really don't understand the context of is kind of insane. Like Iraq in the okay. Fun detail in here. There was there was an attempted semi-socialist fascist takeover of Iraq that did not take place. You know how there's the golden circle is like this idea with the United States for the southern part to create like take over Mexico and the Caribbean and create a golden circle for slavery. So Iraq had like a golden square, I think is what it was. But essentially it was a semi-Arab nationalist, not to say Arab nationalist, but it was like an Iraqi nationalist fascist attempt to take over the government and basically align itself with Germany, which is one of the reasons why in World War II... Yeah.
What?
It occurred to me. Where are they from?
Okay. We're going to get contentious in here. The amount of infighting that's going to take place.
The Kurds, right?
Yeah, one of the groups. One of the
what
groups
time?
for the Kurds, yes. In the northern part of Iraq, yes.
Yeah.
But there's a variety of different peoples.
Right, because this is where YouTube. Why did I say YouTube? I was thinking about England.
What?
And
Are you okay?
I don't know. I got really tired in the last 4.5 minutes.
That's why I wanted to go for a walk after the meal.
Yeah, I think I needed coffee and I didn't.
Then I ran into our landlord.
Oh.
Yeah, I spent that whole time talking to Mike.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Now
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
And England is the reason for why the Middle East is so f***ed up.
Yeah, I was gonna say
he's
England
a part
was
of it.
just drawing squares on things and going, "This is a country now."
So for anyone that
Why
has
Africa is so rectangular.
You know, that makes a lot of sense. Also explains Chad.
Yeah. And the Sudan.
Wait, why is it named Chad? Do you know?
no, not off
I
the
think
top of my
Chad
head.
means. I feel like it's a term meaning lake.
It might be from
what
that here. I'm genuinely curious about this.
Yeah.
The
Here,
language
look it up.
of
Look up
Chad.
the origin.
I don't know.
But it's when
Pretty sure
looking
it's the
at
name
the
of a
way borders were drawn. Here's the thing that a lot of people don't understand. People think that a lot of the borders that were drawn by England and France, Germany, Portugal, etc., like all the major colonizing groups, that they thought, okay, they just wanted a nice, clean, straight line, so they did this. But when you actually zoom in on the borders, even though on a map it looks like it's a clean line, it's not a clean line.
Okay.
And usually it's following either when it is a clean line, it's like some kind of parallel. And then it takes like these weird little divots all things around, because that is then following a train track. That is following a river. That is following some kind of mountain range line that they just went, okay, we're making this the border, and that's what they're going to do. There was a whole point with, I'm trying to remember the exact, why I can't remember the name of the exact colony for why it looks like this. But if you look at early maps of Africa in like the year 1900, and why in next to South Africa, there's just this little straight divot that goes right into the middle of Africa from it. And it looks like a panhandle from Florida, but way thinner and longer and dumber.
Okay.
And the whole reason for that was because the Germans were trying to connect their two colonies together. So they agreed to basically buy land from the UK to transfer control of the colony of just this one specific part where they were going to build a railroad through. And they did this only for, you know, the for England to not tell them, hey, so that area that we sold you, there's a giant series of like waterfalls and through there that you can't actually take a railroad through.
Oh, good.
So the whole thing was pointless. So we
do a little trolling.
The England basically scammed Germany out of that, which was funny.
So Germany was right that they were getting scammed. Just they were wrong about who was doing it.
Yes.
I mean, sort of, though it's funny because the original German plan for colonization was that they didn't want colonies. Like, I kid you not, Bismarck is quoted as despising colonies. He didn't want them because colonies were largely a waste of money. The majority of colonies drained more resources than they actually brought in terms of like, they weren't profitable.
Was that true of the American colonies?
No,
No, the American colonies were incredibly profitable.
That's what I thought, yeah.
because a lot of it was self-sustaining in the sense that the American colonies grew themselves. They developed themselves naturally, and so they didn't have to do as much in regards to maintenance. But when you look
Also
at
gave them
what
really
happened
cheap
in
cotton.
yeah, and what happened in large parts of Africa
Dave?
was that you had to build the railroads, you had to build the schools, you had to build all the infrastructure that was necessary in order to be able to transport goods out.
Yeah.
You said we. I thought you were speaking from the British perspective. So that's why I was confused.
No, I was saying as in the American colonies gave Britain a lot of cheap cotton because we couldn't sell it to anybody but Britain.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Also, and speaking of people who were right, you were about Chad.
It was a lake.
Yeah, it comes from the Kanuri language, where the word is sad, and that means lake or of the lake. So the country is just the country of the lake.
I mean, Minnesota's the land of 1,000 lakes. Weren't we going to be talking about weapons? How do we get to Chad?
Have you seen this show?
Yeah, that's kind of what ends up happening in the first place. We were talking about, oh God, wait, how did we actually get into there?
Because I did ask you about weapons.
You did.
Yeah, you did, and you asked about what,
Oh, because I
will say
said
the-
reasons to invade Iraq, and then you
Yeah,
started talking
right,
about Iraq.
right.
and then I went on about the Golden Square and colonization.
You guys
I love
know
this show.
You guys know what the original word for shotgun was in English?
What?
You guys know what they were originally called?
Oh no, because it wasn't from English; it was Dutch. It was the Dutch had the term. Oh, why can I not remember this? in the first
You
place?
might be thinking about blunderbuss.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, that's what
That's
I was
not what I was talking about.
Dunder, because it wasn't blunder. Blunder came from dunder. Dunderbus was the term.
Dunder Mifflin?
Yeah,
What?
but dunder.
Okay. Yeah, so I was talking about the term that gets used in a lot of translations from other languages, fowling piece.
Yes, yes.
Oh, because you're hunting fowl.
yeah, for birds.
A
That was-
fowling piece.
yes.
But the fun thing is when you've never heard, read, or seen the term fowling piece ever before, and you're just reading an ancient book about giants in Patagonia, written by the guys who were on the Magellan expedition, and you see fowling piece, it takes you a while to figure out what the hell they're talking about. Mm-hmm. And when you figure out it's shotgun, it's really upsetting. Because I was like, okay, what is this?
Sounds
A
like
fowling
you're
piece
hanging
is
fowling
literally
piece.
it's a hunting shotgun.
Yeah,
That's the whole purpose.
for hunting fowl. And so, I just want to say, I know we were going to be talking about stupid weapons and stupid armor and things like that throughout history. The funny part about the time I read about them using the fowling piece is what did the Germans politely ask us to stop doing in World War I?
Using fowling pieces?
Using shotguns because they were a problem. They were too effective in the trenches.
As the ones who were using mustard gas.
Yeah. Here's the funny thing. That is both true and yet also a popular myth.
Really?
It is.
Which part's true and which part's
the
myth?
whole part about shotguns being remarkably effective, and they were so effective that it was something the Germans didn't want used because they would cause unnecessary harm. That was a thing that is a very popular misconception, specifically because although, yes, shotguns were remarkably good weapons in trenches, they simultaneously had a bunch of flaws because of the way that their logistics worked, that it caused them to actually have issues inside of trenches to where you wouldn't have clean wounds, which does create the issue that the Germans were talking about.
Got it.
Well, also, like, how frequently were we actually in each other's trenches during World War I?
Or towards the end there, a lot.
Towards the end, for sure.
Especially since the Americans were largely on the offense, going in, like in the Battle of Belleau Wood, etc., charging in, which offensively, you're jumping into the trenches to try and use. Here's the problem. You know how we have like the plastic cartridges and brass cartridges you would have for shotguns now? One of the most common ones that they would utilize were like paper cartridges. You know what the problem is with using something that is even thick paper in a muddy trench?
Gets wet.
Gets wet, which in turn reduces the effectiveness of the shot.
Yeah.
So what would happen is oftentimes the shotgun would still fire, but it would fire with reduced power that the pellets would be embedded in the body, which you couldn't potentially save someone at that point there. It's almost like when using a serrated edge for a knife, that it's creating something that is causing undue pain and suffering that they're going to last longer and die.
I see. This is all great information. I was just getting to the point where I was going to be saying it's funny that they didn't work against the natives.
How did we determine undue pain and suffering and more?
It's highly subjective. Highly subjective. I can't even begin to describe to you the process of how it is that they would determine that. It's more so for a general consensus of what would be agreed upon.
And also generally, is the weapon designed to cause undue pain and suffering? Not so much is somebody experiencing undue pain and suffering.
As an example, triangular blades for weapons. Yes. So they had to be actual proper blades, not just the triangular ones, because what would end up happening, or the serrated ones, is that when used, it would create such a terrible wound on the body that there really was no way to save someone.
Yeah, because
you just died an agonizing death.
Couldn't you literally not? It wasn't possible to sew up a triangular bayonet.
Yeah, which is one of the key things for like serrated blades.
Yeah,
and so that's why any German found with a serrated blade was shot. Like that's even though you weren't supposed to do that, that is what they would do because that's what they would cause. But the funny thing is, the serrated blade was not issued as a weapon we're doing this because of it. It was issued because yes, this is going to be your utility knife that is used for everything. It was meant to be able to cut wire. It was meant to be able to shred off wood. It was meant to be specifically used as a utility tool, also a bayonet. But because of the way it's designed, it would create that problem.
Yeah.
Everybody knows generally why we got into World War II, and by we, I mean America.
Oh, boy.
What was the cause for us entering World War I?
Did they teach history at EA?
Dude, I have no idea.
Dude, it's a combination. So first off, we'd been selling weapons and supplies and everything over the course of the entirety of the war. But
there's an acronym?
So you have the Zimmermann telegram in the first place, which was a attempt by the German, I forget, it was the foreign minister, I think he was, something Zimmermann, where they tried to form an alliance with Mexico to invade the United States should the United States enter in on the war in order to distract it. It's
widely believed that the British faked this telegram.
No. It was believed for the longest time that it was faked, and then the Germans even came out and admitted, yeah, it's actually real. Jeez. Like, that's the thing. If you go and look it up, because a lot of people, there's conspiracy to this day that the whole thing was faked. But that's what I don't understand, because I understand from the initial thing from the conspiracy, but the Germans outright admitted, after initially denying it, that yes, it was real. Like, that was a thing. They did.
I mean, at least they were setting the record straight.
And to be fair, back then, a lot of... I remember thinking this way when I was in high school hearing about this for the first time. You're like, why would Mexico want to invade America? Like, why would that be a draw? What a bizarre thing to suggest to them.
Take their territory back, maybe?
Well, that's the thing.
No, there
is, you
was
know,
in order to take back from the Mexican-American War. So they were going to
Today-
get Texas and
Yeah.
California and
That's what I was going to say. Is
that.
today that seems bizarre to us. Like, why would Mexico want to invade the United States? Back then, we had spent a little while sending our army into Mexico to chase around a particular bandit, and they weren't super happy about that. Also, the time difference between the Mexican-American War and World War I is not all that far off from the time difference between us and World War II.
That's kind of wild because Mexican American was in the 30s and
40s.
1840s.
Late 1840s.
What was the 1830s?
That was the Texan War of Independence,
That's what I'm thinking of.
Yep.
which Mexico, even 10 years later, still did not recognize Texas as an independent country.
Yep, here it was.
And we did.
Regarding the telegram, many Americans, particularly those with German or Irish ancestry, wished to avoid the conflict in Europe since the public had been told falsely that the telegram had been stolen in a decoded form in Mexico. The message was at first widely believed to be an elaborate forgery created by the British. That belief, which was not restricted to pacifist or pro-German lobbies, was promoted by German and Mexican diplomats alongside some anti-war American newspapers, especially those of the Hearst Press Empire. On February 1st, 1917, Germany had begun unrestricted warfare, and this is something that created further demand for Wilson to join in on the conflict, but he nevertheless remained with a dilemma and refused to. Evidence the United States had been provided confidentially by the British informed Wilson that the message was genuine, but he could not make the evidence public without compromising the British code-breaking operation. The problem was, however, resolved without any doubt as to the authenticity of the telegram, because Zimmermann himself, at a press conference on March 3rd, 1917, told an American journalist, "I cannot deny it, it is true." Then, on March 29th, 1917, he gave a speech in the Reichstag in which he admitted that the telegram was genuine.
See, I
Literally,
never heard
this-
that part.
This wasn't something where it was like discovered 30, 40, 50 years later that it was genuine. It's like, no, literally within 3 months of this, the architect of the entire thing came out and said, yeah, I did it. Literally. And there's still conspiracy to this day that Britain is responsible.
How did the conspiracy abound so drastically, considering it was such a short period of time between when it originated?
Oh, the news broke immediately. As soon as it was discovered for this telegram, it was all over in the newspapers. All over the country.
That's the thing is, how is that and never mind. The amount of things we've covered, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Yep.
But so there was the Zimmermann telegram. What else? Because I can imagine that's not the only domino that had to fall for us to get into the war.
Unrestricted submarine warfare was
That
the big
was
thing.
honestly the biggest part was just Americans were getting sunk at sea because Germany basically said, we know you guys are shipping them weapons, so we're just going to start sinking every single ship that enters this strip of water. If it goes past this point, it's fair game. And Americans were like, you can't do that. A lot of these ships are just civilian, shipping food.
Did not realize that also World War I was don't touch our boats.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, the Lusitania was the straw that broke the camel's back. Now, granted, the Germans said, we're doing this because you keep shipping weapons, and America was like, we're not shipping weapons on civilian vessels. Stop it. And then Germany sinks the Lusitania, and we went, you sank a civilian vessel. It's time to go to war. And then Germany was like, you had weapons on it. We went, no, we didn't. We did.
We did. Oh, God, we did. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, 100%. We had weapons on that ship. We had weapons on a lot of civilian ships. See, that's the problem, is the U.S. government put civilians at risk in order to help Britain. And when that happened in the moment, it was, I can't believe Germany sunk a civilian ship, because American civilians didn't know we were shipping military equipment.
Even beyond that, any supplies, food, medical, other, were still treated as tools of war. So while at first there would have been some kind of limitation regarding, okay, well, we're only going after ships that are military cargo vessels that are transporting military cargo, then it became, well, you're supplying Britain with food and medicine. That they need that for the army. That's a tool of war. And so they would start sinking vessels.
Ironically, had Germany not been sinking American shipping, we might not have entered the war. Wilson needed that to happen.
No, but it was really the only way that they could compete with the British at all. Because in the years leading up to World War One, people thought that there was going to be a outright war that started because of the naval arms race.
Yeah.
Because on the mainland, the Germany and its economy had soared to such a degree that its industrial output in the span of like 20 years was neck and neck with Britain. And when I say neck and neck, I mean overall its land output was significantly greater, but its naval aspect was less. So there was this constant fear of, if the Germans dedicate their resources to naval, they will be able to beat the British Navy, the pride of the empire, the thing that allows the empire to exist in the first place. They will beat that out within the next couple decades.
And even after World War I, Germany was ready to do that again. That was part of the big plan, was we're going to beef up our navy. We're going to
Plan Z.
We're going to have a navy that can keep the British Navy down, that, you know, it will be so strong, so tough that the British could never overpower it. And then they built one boat.
Yeah, because even though that's what Mustache Man declared.
Did their means of production just get absolutely obliterated?
Well, Germany was a little Germany was confused about means of production for a while at that point. They put out this guy who thought that the people should own it. He still couldn't figure out what the means of production actually were. He never even got, like, he went to like the Coastal Carolina University of master's programs.
Remember that one
and then
time
he
you
wrote this
said
really stupid book with a guy who was paying for all of his already, and then that guy was like, "Hey, I'm rich, write a book about how bad rich people are and I'll help you." And then a whole bunch of people died because the Russians got a hold of it, and the Russians, you know, God bless them, but they can't read.
To be clear, we're talking about a different Mustache Man.
Listen, if anybody could read in Russia, they would have read the Communist Manifesto and gone, this is stupid.
Oh my God.
Now, to be fair, if anyone read Mein Kampf and didn't come to the conclusion that the guy was a raging lunatic, then that's also a problem. So really, I think what we need to recognize here is that nobody east of, like, Alsace-Lorraine can read.
Or chose to.
Or chose to.
Or had the ability. I wonder how many people in the Soviet Union actually had access to the Communist Manifesto.
Probably not that many.
In the beginning, it would have been harder, but it would have been pushed very heavily later on. That's the thing.
Early on, not a lot of them. And then Das Kapital, even fewer. But, yeah, man, Marx, what a weenie.
How Junior?
Because, I mean, if you look at literacy rates and what ends up happening in the Soviet Union, I can't pull the exact numbers out, but it quadruples in the span of, like, a decade or two in the Soviet Union. Because
I don't understand, like, why did Germany only really build, there were two. There was the Bismarck and then the sister ship to the Bismarck. Okay. That after the British sunk the Bismarck with biplanes. Biplanes.
Were they just like dropping things from the biplanes?
Torpedoes.
Yeah.
We're
Amazing.
not even, so here's the thing. You think about World War II naval warfare, and a lot of it involved airplanes. Now, granted, that was more in the Pacific, that you had the aircraft carrier warfare. Britain still had a lot of battleships. Germany was focused on battleships. The battleships still ruled the waves at the beginning of the war in Europe.
Yes.
So when you think about naval aircraft, you're not, most of what you're thinking about is the Corsair, the Zero, the battle between Japan and America to create the perfect aircraft carrier-based platform. Over in Europe, they weren't focused on that.
Oh, Japan was still battleship focused.
Yeah, That's
the whole point of the Yamato.
They were, but over in Europe, they weren't really doing a lot of that at the beginning of the war because there wasn't a lot of space for you to have aircraft carriers.
No.
You weren't going across the Pacific Ocean island hopping. You were island hopping from the really big island onto the continent. That was it. So they didn't have a lot of that. They had the Spitfire, but the Spitfire wasn't a great naval plane.
They used a decent number of medium planes that were capable. Like, you have the light plane. To put it into Hoi-4 terms for anyone who plays Hearts of Iron, you have the light, medium, and heavy, like, planes, essentially. So with, like, the heavy being, like, the big heavy bombers and whatnot that can traverse long distances.
There's also a lot of use of those medium, like, fighter bombers, like the Mosquito.
The medium fighters and the medium bombers, like, those are the kinds of things that would be, they're not as maneuverable, but they're able to carry a larger amount of fuel, larger amount of ammunition, and they're able to go over long distances in order to be able to, like, scout as well as bomb targets. Yep. And so those were far more popular when you don't need to have a large aircraft carrier group in the middle of the ocean, because the middle of the ocean isn't doing anything there.
Yeah. Well, plus
you're focused on the Channel, the North Sea, and subsequent areas.
And the strategy at that point in the war in the European theater was essentially, and the reason why the Mustang and the Spitfire and all that stuff were designed the way they were, is they were essentially just like guiding the bombers to their targets and making sure that other aircraft didn't shoot down the bombers.
Well, that's the thing is and that's one of the other interesting things about World War II aircraft and the development and everything. The American air strategy was geared towards offense.
Yep.
All of our fighters, we did have our escorts, right? But American air doctrine was experiencing two different wars at the same time. So we had our very offensive war in the Pacific, where we were learning what you needed to get the longest distance, to be in, have the maneuverability to fight the Zeros and everything. Over in Europe, it's a completely different war where the goal is guiding these giant bomber squadrons in and fighting other aircraft at the same time. But those other aircraft we were fighting had a completely different use case than the ones the Japanese were using. If you were fighting the F-109?
Yeah.
W-109?
Yeah.
Yeah. The 109, that was a heavily armored, really fast, strong aircraft. Wasn't as maneuverable. The Zero, on the other hand, might as well not have had armor at all, but it was really, really, really fast.
It could turn on a freaking dime.
Like, American pilots had to devise entire new maneuvers that usually worked in pairs in order to figure out how to outmaneuver the Zeros.
Which
Their
is
airplanes
why,
just couldn't do it.
Which is why the Corsair was such a game changer
Yes.
at the late war.
But that is also why you have things like the Mustang that it's almost like the perfect aircraft for its role.
Mm-hmm.
And the Corsair is the perfect aircraft for its role because the American military is fighting two different wars at once. And so they're taking lessons from each side of the conflict and applying them to each new generation of planes. Because you got to remember, the Corsair didn't see action until, what, 43?
I think it might have been his latest 44, like early
Yeah.
44.
And the Mustang was the same way. The Mustang was introduced at, I think, the end of 1944.
Yeah.
Because these are planes where they've had time to learn how everything actually works and what you need. And so they're taking lessons from the Pacific and applying them to the European theater.
Yeah.
They're taking lessons from the European theater and applying them to the Pacific. For example, you need armor on an aircraft.
Yeah. Because they went through multiple different iterations of the Corsair. The first Corsair was produced in 41.
There would have been no reason for the Mustang to be as maneuverable as it was if American doctrine was only dealing with German fighters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They would have gone heavier. They would have gone with more firepower, more armor, and you would have had a completely different kind of plane flying over Europe. But because they recognized in the Pacific that maneuverability and the talent of a pilot was often going to be the game changer, that doctrine of we just need really heavily armored planes was tempered. Mm-hmm. And America, with a much larger population, could just keep training pilots to be better and better and better. And we knew that the Germans didn't have that. The attrition rate for the German side was so high. Even if your pilot survived getting shot down, he was almost always flying over enemy territory.
Oh, they lost the majority of their skilled pilots, specifically in the Battle of Britain, because you get shot down over Britain in a defensive side. You can typically recover the pilot, even if you can't recover the plane. You get shot down as a German, you're not getting recovered.
During the Battle of Britain, too, there were pilots who would go up, get shot down, parachute back down to the ground, and they'd have another Spitfire ready to go for them.
Yeah.
Like you had pilots who got shot down 2, 3, 4 times in a day during the Battle of Britain, and they just kept going back up. So you've got, the British had a completely different aircraft strategy. All of their aircraft were defensive against land-based operations. Mm-hmm. Over on the American side, the Mustang its purpose, its function is bomber defense. But it also has all of this Pacific doctrine that went into its design because they were considering that for the Pacific too. Mm-hmm. So the Mustang is a fighter that, yes, it's got this purpose, but it's not built to counter the German airplanes. It's built to be the best possible all-around fighter, and that just makes it better than the German airplanes, mm-hmm. which are built solely for the purpose of attack at the beginning of the war. And now they're dealing with a plane that's built to both attack and defend, while all of their doctrine for when they were designing their airplanes was defensive or was offensive. And now they need these airplanes to defend things.
Well, it is the interesting thing between the Mustang and the Corsair in terms of power duo, because it's very similar to the F-22 and the F-35.
Yeah.
Whereas the Corsair was intended as a more intensively multi-role fighter with like extensive bombing and rocketing capabilities across all of these different islands. And that's part of the reason why you saw what was really interesting at the end of the war was the Corsair adopted Mustang tactics over Japan, guiding the B-17s and then eventually the B-29s in their firebombing raids, and then eventually, the final bombing raid.
Yeah. Also, it is crazy how fast both of those planes are.
Oh, it's insane.
Considering they're propeller planes.
Yeah. Yeah, the Corsair was the first propeller plane to break the 400-mile-an-hour barrier. And then they both kind of were neck and neck.
Yeah, the Mustang and the Corsair are basically, they're very nearly the same plane.
Yeah.
No, so this is just making me happy. I was looking at this here as y'all are ranting about it. Like, yes, I know the whole conversation was specifically talking about German naval production. Then went into
somehow on aircraft.
Like, just 2 American planes, and we're going to focus exclusively on these and talk about
He really loves the Mustang. I really love the Corsair.
Big fans here.
So anytime we get to talk about it, it's really
fun. Blazing Angels, Squadrons of World War II?
No,
Okay, so first of all, you need to play Blazing Angels, Squadrons of World War II. It's the most fun game for plane people.
Yep.
You fly so many different planes.
All right.
Yeah. Also, there's one thing that happens and it makes you cry. And it's not dropping the sun on Japan. You're not involved on that one. They don't make you do that. Or the second time either. Neither of the times. Anyway, all of this is to say that for some reason Germany built one boat.
Okay. It's not related.
That's going in the intro.
Going into all the Pacific. Okay. Plan Z. That's the whole point of that. Oh my God. I like how over the course of the entire conversation, it's like, oh yeah, we're going to cover all this time. And it's like World War I and World War II, because there's still so much stuff that you can actually talk about. And I know we're going to go into other areas, but the whole purpose of Plan Z was that, again, the Germans, specifically Mustache Man, wanted to be able to challenge British power. Now I'll say this. Do you know what happened to all of the German Navy after World War I? It was scrapped.
I would think so.
That was dragged into... When I say scrapped, the whole point is that the Navy, if I recall correctly, the different naval assets were going to be divvied up between the varying powers, sold, some for scrap, some to be incorporated to other navies, etc. And it was just... They were going to lose all access to it, essentially. And a series of German officers sabotaged their own boats in order to not allow this to happen, because they didn't want to give even further naval assets to the victorious Entente. So they destroyed pretty much the entirety of the German Navy that was left here at the time, sinking it to the ocean. And it wasn't worth it to try and salvage anymore from that. Meaning Germany, going into World War II, had to build an entire new navy from scratch, whereas other naval forces had been using the same ships while building others since the early 1900s.
Yeah.
A lot of those ships that were in the British Navy had been in service since World War I already. They were just updated as time went on. Now,
and we still have boats sailing from the 70s.
I was literally just going to say, I fear for the country that makes us reactivate all of the ships that are just sitting in wait.
Yeah, because a lot of it is mothballed. Now, the entire point, then, of the German naval strategy was that they wanted to, if given enough time, the plan was, I think, by 1944 or 1946, they were going to have an entire modern battle fleet. Like, that was the whole point. But the war started, obviously, 6, 7, 8 years before they were going to actually be ready. So,
this may be a controversial question. Was Hitler?
He was
almost certainly.
Yes, but more importantly, he was a broke bitch that was really lucky.
Okay, because I'm sitting here like, you're Adolf. You're sitting in your...
Okay, thanks. Yeah. Association, you're Adolf. God.
All right. The royal you.
Okay.
Okay.
I am sitting in my big chair.
Oh yeah, Führer. I come here to tell you Plan Z is on the way. We are building a great navy. It will be ready 1944, 1946, somewhere in there.
How long?
10 years.
I have to wait to go into Poland? For 10 years?
No, there are no oceans in the Poland.
There's one.
However, we have to worry about the British. What do you do, Mr. Fuhrer?
Your accent is making Archie growl. He's growling under the table.
Mein
while
Führer,
this is happening.
listen not to the American man. Mein Führer, I tell you this.
How does he get in? Never mind.
Do not ask the questions. I ask you this. You could invade the Poland now. But if the British join them, we'll be in very big trouble.
But we
You switched to become French right there.
I did not mean to. I'm sorry. Every time I'm trying to be evil, I just go French.
You just went French. Like toward the end, you went like this, and you just became French.
Anyway, mein Führer.
Yes, sir.
Will you wait? Will you wait until the Navy is finished? Or will you invade Poland?
We need the pierogies.
And the funny part is that's what actually happened.
Unironically, the invasion over food is one of the key reasons why Czechoslovakia was taken.
Wait, you mean
Really?
it wasn't because there were Germans there?
Yeah. Okay. So this one. So when I said that Hitler was a lucky but broke, that is a very accurate statement. So you know how there's the whole thing with the Mefo bills and the rapid rearmament of Germany and what ended up happening. Okay.
Yes, of course.
So the Mefo.
How about you explain it just in case?
We're getting into Nazi economics here.
All right,
Fantastic.
the miso soup.
PJ, blur out some of these words that we've used.
All right. So here's the whole point. The Mefo bills were essentially an IOU system of the German Reich. The entire point of it is that the German state was limited by the Treaty of Versailles for how much money they were able to borrow. The idea was at any given time, they could not borrow more than 100 million Reichsmarks. Because one of the key ways that you invest rapidly into things is you borrow money, you invest, and then you reap the rewards later. Like, that's the whole idea. That's why...
Just really quickly, just important thing that we should probably establish here.
Yeah.
The Treaty of Versailles.
Yes.
I think this is probably one thing that isn't taught very well in high school.
Yes.
Ask me and see if I know.
Aiden, do you have any idea what the terms of the Treaty of Versailles were?
Only because I've looked into it after high school.
Yes, exactly. Aiden, whose fault was World War I?
Colloquially, the Germans.
Yeah. Do you remember who got shot and it started World War I?
It was Franz Ferdinand, was it?
Yes, and he was the Archduke of where?
Wait. Archduke of... It wasn't Germany, I know that.
That's the important part. It was
Yeah.
Austria-Hungary.
Austria, that's it.
The Austro-Hungarian Empire. He was
Right.
the Archduke.
Right.
And who shot him?
Was
Where was that guy from?
Was it like a Dutch guy?
Serbian.
Serbian.
He was Serbian. So a Serbian guy shot an Austrian guy. And as a result, Austria declared war on Serbia. And as a result of that, Russia declared war on Austria. So Germany not only did not fire the shot that started the war, nor was a German killed, nor did Germany declare war on Austria or Serbia.
Wait.
Yes.
Germany responded when Russia declared war on their allies.
Slightly, they did outright. So Austria went to Germany and basically, not exactly asked permission, but Germany did essentially write a blank check to Austria to do what they wanted because they knew, they did not think that the British were going to join in the war. They knew that when the conflict broke out, France would join on the side of Russia because of the long-standing alliance between them. When this happened, their plan was to knock France out in a quick war, which would be able to solidify their stance because they had already done it before.
Yes.
That was the Franco-Prussian
I'm
War.
not saying that Germany bears no responsibility for the war getting to the stage it did.
There's also a whole thing that if World War I had not happened then, people think like, oh, World War I, if it didn't happen then, it just wouldn't have happened. No.
It would have
There were
happened. It would have happened later.
In fact, World War I could have happened about 3 years earlier. There was the whole thing called the Moroccan crisis.
Yeah.
The Agadir crisis, which was the Moroccan crisis. Yeah, that could have been World War I right there.
Yeah, but my point in this little thought experiment we're doing here, because I think people genuinely don't understand it, World War I was going to happen.
Yes.
World War II did not have to happen.
No. And in fact, it's actually stupid as to how it happens in the first place.
World War II, and this is an important thing for people to understand, not because it excuses Germany's actions in World War II. It doesn't. But if people looked at what happened with World War II, they might vote differently regarding how we do things now. They might have different reactions to certain foreign policy things. Because what happened, I'm not talking about anything in particular, just to be clear, but if you look back at after World War I, what happened was the Allied powers who won the war basically put all of the blame on Germany. They destroyed Germany's economy. They took parts of Germany away. They charged Germany war reparations. They put limits on how much Germany could militarize. They basically took the entirety of the war debt, saddled Germany with it, and then did everything they could to cripple Germany even further. And the reason they did that is really France.
Yes.
Is there any truth to the line, and I'm not going to tell you where it's from, but because it's getting right at the heart of what you're saying, that the trigger to the last World War was an argument over how many telegraph poles Germany owed its war debt creditors?
Literally, probably not.
You mean World War II?
Yes.
For that? No. Again, but credit is actually a really big part of that. That whole thing.
Yeah, that's what I was getting to, is the reason that World War II happened. There's not one sole reason, but it all can tie back to the situation Germany found itself in the 1920s, largely as a result, not of the war, but of the treaty which ended it. The Treaty of Versailles put Germany in such a crippled position that, I mean, you had to literally take a wheelbarrow full of marks to the store if you were going to buy groceries.
Yep.
Like, the inflation was out of control. The government kind of ceased to function because they got rid of the monarchy, and it became the Weimar Republic. And then you had communists and fascists beating each other in the street, dressed in uniforms, like forming into paramilitaries. So by the time Hitler's actually rising to power in 1933, Germany, for the last almost 20 years now, has been a complete mess economically, and really only because of the Treaty of Versailles. If the Treaty of Versailles had basically been all of the monarchs coming together and going, all right, that sucked. Can we agree to not do it again? And that was it. That's where they left it. It would have been a lot harder for a guy like Hitler to come to power.
Yeah,
Because
that's true.
he needed that instability. He needed to be able to point the finger somewhere. And one of the ways of getting everybody behind him was to point the finger at the communists and the Jews, and to basically say the Jews and the communists they're one and the same. They're two sides of the same coin. They're working together. Communism is Jewish. Meanwhile, everything he was actually advocating for was not that different from what Stalin ended up doing. It was just prettier.
This sounds vaguely similar
Fascism
to...
and communism are very similar. One is just prettier than the other.
This sounds vaguely similar to another country that is currently going through a crisis right now.
Which one are you thinking of?
Venezuela.
That's a whole other thing that I could then go on to many
Yeah, but
different
they don't
rants
have the
about for how they-
excuse of just losing a war.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing with World War II is the Treaty of Versailles is kind of what gives Hitler the opportunity to do what he did.
Yep.
So once again, everything is France's fault.
I know. It goes back.
All comes back to France.
Okay, there was a whole thing for the occupation, and it that was a part of it, especially with the operation of the Ruhr. It's a big thing. But what it was trying to get at regarding the Mefo bills and debt and what they had to do, part of the limits from the Treaty of Versailles, they could only borrow a set amount of money. Their military forces were limited. They could not do much for anything, because any kind of going into debt, investment into heavy industry, etc., would have been an immediate red flag of, oh, hey, hold on. Germany's remilitarizing. They didn't want that. So the Mefo bills were essentially IOU bills that were printed in parallel to the standard currency, so that on paper, Germany was not going into debt. But through the Mefo bills, they were going billions of Reichsmarks into debt. Not 100 million, billions into debt.
and billions and billions.
And believe it or not, billions.
And this is how they were able to rapidly industrialize again, because they were going into massive debt. Now, the way the Mefo bills worked, right, was that they would function so long as people continued to trade them and buy into it and receive them. But
Basically, continue to treat them like currency.
yes, but
Oh my God, wait, there's another system that works that way. And the entire world runs on it. Yay!
But the moment they mature, and if someone tried to collect upon the debt, which no one ever did because you didn't want to go against the Nazi government, but if you tried to collect upon it, what would end up happening is that there would be no money to actually do. Like, you wouldn't be able to pay it.
Yeah.
So the Nazi government is going further and further and further into debt. However, the Mefo bills only apply within the German economy. You can't use the Mefo bills to pay for foreign goods because the government of Denmark isn't going to take 100 million Mefo bills and use that to buy things. They can't. Like, what is the fucking point of it? So that's only used within Germany. All of the hard currency and foreign reserves of the German state are being used in order to buy other goods. The entire point of what Mustache Man wanted is that he wanted autarky. He wanted for the German state to not have to rely on anything. They wouldn't need tungsten, they wouldn't need steel, they wouldn't need oil, they wouldn't need anything from anyone. The German state was going to be self-sufficient. Problem: the German state doesn't have a bunch of the shit that they actually need within the borders of Germany. So they have to buy it, at least in the beginning, before they start stealing everything. So in order to buy it, they have to use their foreign reserves to buy the tungsten. They need the high-quality steel, which they buy from Sweden. They have to get all of these different goods. And more importantly than any of that, because so much of the resources is being dedicated to the military purposes, they have to buy food and fertilizers on the foreign market using all their remaining cash. By early to mid-1937, they have almost completely run out of money. They have no foreign reserves, basically. And so this creates a crisis where they have to get gold. They have to get stuff that can be used. So what do? Anschluss. They take over Austria. The first step in the takeover of Austria, the entire point of it, was to seize the Austrian bank's gold reserves. So the entire state treasury of Austria was seized in order to be able to pay for this. And it delayed the Mefo bills a little bit more.
Two things. One, you've mentioned tungsten specifically. Was that just being used as an alloy for
artillery?
Steel? Okay, yeah. So in what portion of the artillery mechanism were they using tungsten?
For the barrels, I believe. Like, its ability to resist heat meant that tungsten was necessary in order to create a high-quality functioning gun barrel that didn't just deform when firing heavy artillery shells through.
No wonder why they're... I can't remember the name of it, but the thing that they had on rail cars, no wonder why they needed like 7 of them. Because tungsten is insanely heavy.
Yes, it is. So those super heavy artillery
They'll put
pieces...
tungsten cores into certain kinds of shells now, too.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Anti-tank shells.
Were they doing that that early?
I don't... Probably not for artillery. It's too imprecise. No. But their tungsten has a lot of military applications.
Also, secondly, are you saying that the basis for the phenomenal war film Kelly's Heroes is actually somewhat like in reality?
I haven't seen Kelly's Heroes.
Really? Have you? Oh, boys, we have to watch this week.
Okay.
It is Clint Eastwood, Don Rickles, a number of the other big guys of that time in the 70s. It's a World War II movie where in the beginning of the film they discover in a bag from a captured German officer that what they thought were lead bars to sink his communications bag are actually painted bars of gold as to not be noticeable. It was part of the communication to discuss that behind enemy lines, from the American perspective, was an entire bank filled with gold that the Germans had acquired in order to, pay for elements of the war. Mm-hmm. And the plot of the film is Kelly, Clint Eastwood, gets together a group of men to go behind enemy lines and rob the bank. Oh, also Donald Sutherland plays a hippie, like 1940s equivalent of a hippie tank commander. And there's a couple scenes where he just goes absolutely ham on like an entire like German like company.
Oh, good.
But yeah, it's a comedy movie, but like a dramedy in that sense, but it's really funny. But also, like, yeah, the entire point of the film is to go behind the enemy lines into Germany. It might have been Austria at that point, and steal a bunch of the gold that supposedly Germany had already stolen.
Yeah.
Also, weren't they making a movie about the last battle?
Of
I
73
think
Easting?
so.
The Battle of Castleator.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, we
And
were
it just
supposed to
never
do
came
that.
out.
We've been talking about that since high school.
Let's make that happen.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
And so let's see. That was Austria and the Anschluss. And then, so this delayed things. It's like basically getting a reprieve on the interest for your loan. They were able to pay back some of it here, but they are going to continue to go further into debt as they have to rapidly remilitarize. So his plan, right, was the 4-year plan. He was going to completely prepare Germany for war by 1940. And then in 1937, they ran out of money. 1 year, 1.5 years is all that it took. So, okay, things are a bit delayed. But it's all right, because guess what? Next target, Sudetenland. And then from there, Czechoslovakia. The justification for taking Sudetenland was to take the Germans, that the Germans needed to be part of Germany. That was the whole point. So it, on paper, made sense. But it was never going to stop there. The idea that he would have given up makes no sense. Well, I mean, they thought that it would make sense, but the reason they wanted Czechoslovakia is that running out of money still, the end of 1937, Mustache Man is going and giving a speech saying how they need to take over Czechoslovakia in order to be able to relieve the food shortages within Germany. Because Czechoslovakia, especially the Bohemia region, was one of the most heavily industrialized centers in the entirety of Europe. This region was responsible.
Had a lot of windows as a result.
Well, that region was responsible for producing over like 75% of all of Austria-Hungary's weapons during World War I. That one region from the entire empire. It was stupidly industrialized. It had a great agricultural system.
Bohemia has caused a lot of problems throughout history.
It
is
has.
What I'm hearing.
It has, kind of. Yeah, it has. It's been a battleground for many different areas.
Well, I was more thinking about the defenestrations.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, recently did I figure out what Bohemian Rhapsody actually is talking about? Not the song, I mean the title.
Bohemia?
Well, specifically Rhapsody. Did not know what that was until like earlier this week when I was reading the introduction to the Iliad.
I definitely should know what a rhapsody means.
I believe I can't remember the actual like initial term.
Now we have to look it up here because it's going to bother me.
It's like Rhapsod or something like that. But at least in the introduction of this book, they're talking about it as being the continuation of the oral tradition of talking about Homer.
It means an epic poem.
Yeah, but in the context, I was like, the presentation of Homeric poems,
Yes.
which so Bohemian Rhapsody, Bohemic reinterpretations of Homer's epic poetry. I don't know. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Total random tangent, but. To me, it's really interesting, like especially going back into history, because this is something that you and I have discussed at times. This is a completely total differentiation of the topic, but something like lusty explorers.
Oh, yeah.
And just how words get totally
Those explorers
changed
were
over
lusty all
time.
Yeah, there's as Marco Polo would agree.
Yeah, they were. There's nothing quite like reading late 1500s, early 1600s English. It is. It's the same. It's the same words. But they mean different things, and they're spelled differently. And like, you're sending lusty men ashore for different reasons.
This was in the reading that he did for learning more about the Roanoke colony.
Yeah.
And whose team was it that was going into? It was like the Carolinas.
The lusty sailors part was from John White.
That sounds right.
John White, James White. No. Yeah. So anyway, John White and his lusty explorers needed to go ashore on the islands.
Modern romantasy, everybody.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, it's a totally different kind of lusty explorer than the ones who were along with Lewis and Clark.
Yeah, and they weren't even lusty to begin with. They were. It was brought out of them.
Yeah. Lusty at one point meant ambitious.
Lust for adventure.
Yeah.
Desiring.
Yeah. Which I mean, given that I am gonna need to go review the context of the translation of the sin of lust in the King James.
God, that's exactly where I went. I was like, well, it had to be mainly because of the biblical interpretation, right?
I don't know. That's the thing is, I don't know when the biblical. Huh.
Oh no, he's lost.
Lust? What if we did a new show that it's a bunch of people stranded on an island after their plane crashes, but it's not called Lost?
You're just
Love
making
Island.
Naked and Afraid.
It's that or Love Island.
Let's take the lust part of Love Island and the afraid part of Naked and Afraid.
Not the naked part?
No. That'll come later. So will all of the people on the show. And we just do Lust. And it's I don't know, I think Quentin Tarantino would direct it.
Only if there's feet.
I was literally about to say that.
It's an island, of course there will be feet.
Whose feet?
Probably the Islanders.
Anyway, on Patreon, we now discuss it. No, we're not doing that here.
Well,
Yeah,
no,
it's not even
We
close.
are at Patreon.
Yeah, it's
Are we
pretty-
actually?
Yeah.
It's about time.
Oh
for
my
it, yeah.
god! And we didn't even get to the whole point to talk about how the
That's what I was
fucking
just saying.
German naval assets. We keep on going on.
Not even the part I was getting to. I was like, we were supposed to be talking about stupid weapons throughout history.
Yeah.
Oh
well, you
my
can
God.
talk about German Navy, and then we can hop over to Patreon and talk about dumb weapons.
Oh my god! Yeah, it is. Though that would honestly probably be a whole episode in and of itself. Yeah. You know what? Okay, so where was I? They take over Czechoslovakia. They also, again, primary target of that, seize the gold reserves of Bohemia. That's the whole point. They wanted to take the state gold reserves. And again, they were running out of money heading into 1939. The whole point of the invasion of Poland, because this is also dealing with the free city of Danzig or Gdansk, depending upon what language you're using to describe it, is that the plan was to use this as a pretext in order to be able to seize the territory and start the war. If the Polish somehow gave up, they would have launched the war anyway and done something. Yeah. This was just the pretext that they needed in order to be able to start the fight. The funny story about all of that is that the Italians were not prepared for this at all.
I mean, that's something that can be said about Italy, basically, ever since the fall of the Roman Empire.
So remember how there's that whole plan for like, oh yeah, Plan Z, going to be ready by like 1944 or 1946, somewhere around there? Yeah, Mussolini was fully aware of this and was preparing the country to be ready to go to war by 1944, 1945, 1946. That was the original plan.
Man, if only Hitler knew some guys who knew how to manage money.
Yeah. And so...
Yeah, it took a second too. Oh god.
It's crazy.
And so Plan Z, during this whole time, yeah, they're cranking out ships and they realize, oh yeah, hey,
Hitler was cranking it out.
in order to do what we need, we're not going to be able to
not
build
doing
all
that.
these mega battleships like what they want. We're going to have to refocus into raiding aspects, like similar to what they did in World War I, except submarines by that point were way better in 1939 than they were in 1917.
Right.
The hybrid electric engines that were used in World War I submarines meant that the submarines on average could go underwater for like an hour or two.
Oh my god.
That is, so people have this confusing idea where they think, oh yes, submarines, they're underwater. The majority of time that submarines were active, they were above water on the surface. They only dived when they would prepare for actual combat.
Also, you know what U-boat is short for?
Underwater boat?
Yeah.
Unterseeboot.
Yep.
Undersea boat.
Yeah.
Yep.
In German.
That's the whole point. So
Untersee.
Unterseebooten.
So the reason why the Germans switched from battleships over to submarines was literally cost cutting. They had to do it. They had no money otherwise.
Ironically, it was extremely effective.
Also, it's just a shame because battleships are just so cool.
Well, yeah, and the Bismarck, man, it was a cool ship.
It was a cool
Just
ship.
decided to sail it out into the North Sea with no support.
Well, I mean, the idea of it was that it was faster than a lot of the... Despite its heavy armament, it was fast, and it was going to be able to outmaneuver a lot of the British forces that would come after it.
And hit Mach 2, though, can it?
He was made to rule the waves across the seven seas and to lead the war machine.
All right.
To rule the waves and lead the Kriegsmarine.
Did you look this up intentionally?
What?
The Sabaton lyric.
I'm just talking about the terror of the seas, the Bismarck and the Kriegsmarine. God.
2,000 men and 50,000 tons of steel?
Dude, sounds like a good Saturday night to me.
Well, it did set the course for the Atlantic at the Allies at the
Sounds like an even better night to me.
Tell me about firepower and firefight.
Put me 2,000 men and 50,000 tons of steel right just on a course for the Atlantic, and we're going to have a good time.
That's a lot of seamen.
That's a lot of seamen.
They're coming for
Anyway,
America.
Patreon time, probably. Unless, did you get a chance to talk about the classifications?
Wait, what do you mean the classifications?
Yeah, I'm not sure what he meant by that.
Or the naming something, or the... Is that what you were talking about? I don't know. You
No,
said
no,
naming classifications. or
All this was
something.
about the production capabilities of
The
Germany.
whole point to get to the very end here, and I know we're still technically we're not on Patreon quite yet.
lost.
The entire point of the
hierarchy.
conversation here was that we were trying to get to why Germany only had a couple of ships
Oh, yeah, right.
going into the.
Good point.
So the reason they had 2 battleships is because they had no more money and they started the war
we did
early.
talk about stupid weapons, because 2 battleships and nothing else is a stupid weapon.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, but the plane that took it out was the Swordfish, I believe. It's the World War I, like late World War I era British biplane
Incredible.
that could fly so low and so slow that you had to manually keep an eye on it. Like, you didn't notice it until it was already there. Like, they flew so low and so slow that, like, German radar wasn't picking them up until they were within visual range.
No. And they didn't have good sights in order to be able to identify. So it's kind of funny. Regarding targeting, the forces that had the best targeting systems of all were the Americans by far. And that was one of the things that was really a confusing thing against the Japanese, was that, technically speaking, Japanese guns should have drastically outranged American ones. But
They couldn't see anything.
they couldn't see, and all of their targeting systems had to be manually calculated, whereas that was not the case for the American forces. They actually had the early computing that allowed it to be able to target forces at much better ranges. It's funny.
Also, when the Allies had a problem with range, they just tilted the ship.
Yes, Texas.
I love the thought of some British career admiral coming from the long tradition of British seafaring out there on D-Day, looking over the sea and being like, all right, boys, well, we've done as much as we can. Any closer and we'll be within range of their of their guns, and we've reached the maximum tilt that our guns can reach at this range, so this is it. This is all we can do. And then just looking out and seeing the American captain of the USS Texas, just not even seeing the just seeing the boat start to tilt. And just being like, no. They wouldn't.
Meanwhile, over there, they're like, let it flood!
Oh, yeah. There's some British guy's like, I cannot believe these chaps are going to try it. And some guy is just like over there waving his hat. Freebird is playing 30 years too early.
Yes. They found a way.
There's just, people are, the guy in the turret is just like chugging a beer before he like rotates into place.
Well, with that, my friends, I think that we have the conclusion of a dumb but funny thing in history.
Yeah.
Now, moving on to Patreon, we're going to be talking about really dumb weapons and shit that.
we are?
Yeah,
Finally.
I think we're going to talk about dumb things that shouldn't have existed. We're going to have to do another episode where we are actually going into more like of that aspect for a
Probably.
full episode.
Yeah, we should probably choose something else then. We could talk about that tomorrow.
You know what? You're right.
I don't even know what he's going to go with dumb weapons.
Why don't we, you know what? We're going to find out what we're going to talk about on Patreon just like you, because we don't know what it is yet.
I guess that works. All right. See you guys on Patreon.
I'm not waving.